listening to the lead investigator, I was a bit confused. I mean, it was a message laced with a lot of military jargons. So when you read what he actually said, and for the benefit of our listeners, I would want to read as the central cause of what may have happened. Very, very interesting in terms of the language used. He said, the investigation determined that the accident was caused by the sudden loss of altitude and lift due to downdraft. This loss of altitude without change in power or pitch attitude is consistent with downdraft associated with changing environmental conditions over high terrain. When I read it, I was like, what is this guy talking about? But in simple terms, it was because of what they call a sudden and powerful downdraft. And I have a pilot friend who told me, because of the range in the Adansi area, you know, it's mountainous. And at the time of the morning, it was a bit foggy, you know. So when you don't have clear view, it may lead you to where you don't want to get to. And helicopters are unable to go high like a normal aeroplane would do. So flying through a mountainous area in a foggy environment creates a lot of problems. And that's essentially what this whole thing is about. What do you think?
Yeah, unfortunately, the report hasn't helped much.
Really?
Because we know that whenever a helicopter is going to crash, there's going to be loss of altitude.
Sure.
I mean, every lay person knows that a helicopter crashing, there's a loss of altitude. Yeah. Either a sudden or progressive loss of altitude. They have just told us that it was sudden downward draft. So that's what I'm saying, that the report hasn't helped much. One, I expect that they would have gone beyond the technical to look at the social. What was the psychological framework of the pilots at the time that they were using the aircraft?
Would they know?
They should, because they will be talking to families, they will be talking to their doctors, they will be talking to people. They should know. You see, so it is technical, but the good people of Ghana they are not interested in those technical jargons. Because they want to, even if you are saying there was a sudden loss of altitude, you have not told us what caused the loss of altitude. Was it a mechanical fault or was it a human error? You get it? They have not told us what conversation problem might have transpired. Some of them could be security issue they may want to go, but there was the black box I'm told was recovered. Yeah. Nothing in the report has made reference
to what was contained in the black box.
Because the pilot probably would have said that due to A, B, C, D, we're experiencing some turbulence, maybe raise up your seat belts and whatever. All that would give the good people of Ghana an insight as to what problems transfer. Remind you, I'm making this point, and sternly so, because the loss of those particular lives was actually something that was a huge blow. And in a year, apart from this stampede, that is the first major thing. We lost colleagues. We lost friends. And people lost families.
Yeah.
Up to now, so even, I'm just imagining if I were a member of the family, even as a friend and as a colleague, I'm wondering whether this report will make me go to sleep knowing what might have caused the death of my friend. With the grace of God, I don't think the report is enough to tell the good people of Ghana, to tell families that my husband, my brother died because of sudden loss of altitude or a downward draft. And that downward draft was caused by what? Again, they have mentioned in the report that, you see, there were certain state-of-the-art security features that probably were absent in the
helicopter,
or in the helicopter, that probably did not give them institutional awareness of what they were going through. They need to tell us, so that when we are approving even the helicopter they want to buy, we want to be sure whether there are those security features.
All those security features are in there.
Even as a lay person, right? Because we'll be guided by this history. We will know that, okay, this accident that happened, we will at all times be asking questions because, like my senior colleague said, we need to learn from experience. So when an issue of this nature is presented to you as a committee to investigate, go beyond the technicalities and simplify the report and answer the lingering question of everyday Ghanaian, the man on the street. What are their concerns? All what they knew is that a helicopter crashed and their loved ones perished. That is what they know. They will want to know, okay, like I said, no helicopter will crash without losing altitude. That is common. That is commonsensical, right? But what would have caused the loss of altitude is what the investigation should center on. And I think that maybe aspects of the report, with the grace of
it will be the weather, obviously.
Yes, I've not read the full report, so I will want to give them the benefit. But I think that in giving the updates to the good people of Ghana, they ought to focus on those, because those are the things that we are interested in. If it's the weather, let us know, okay, like you said, like your friend mentioned, it's a good reason why maybe a helicopter will suddenly lose altitude. For instance, there can be a cloud even approaching. The cloud approaching means that he may want to swerve the cloud. We all use helicopters and we use aircraft. That probably would have caused possibly a swerve or a loss of altitude because the craft is not able to recover. Because in their report, they are saying that they were not able to regain the upward altitude. Right? So I think that that is where I have my uneasiness with the report. I respect the technical expertise of the people who were commissioned to do this investigation. I'm even told the United States Air Force helped assisted us with the investigation. But it also gives an indication that the investigation is not concluded. Because I think that this may be a preliminary report. And my expectation is that the president would have to ensure that a complete and thorough investigation is done on this issue. Look, beyond what has been presented, because there are still questions. Like I said, the social part of it. Every single person on the flight would have to be profiled if we are serious. Every single person, the activities of the people before the event, the activities of the people, even sometimes, even a month to the event. That is where a serious investigation will have to focus on. That the manifest included some people, those people they came into contact with, what were their mental states as of the time that they were even engaged in this. Then we then come to the flight. But for now, they are only focusing on the aircraft. And even with the helicopter. And even with the helicopter, they are not telling us, there are many questions than answers. They are not even telling us, okay, sudden loss of altitude. What caused the loss of altitude? Was it a mechanical fault with the flight? Was it an issue of the weather? Was it an issue of human error? We will need those answers so that even in our attempt to learn, we would put all that in our experiences and learn from them. With the grace of God, we have some insight now. That insight, to me, is what I already know. Even as a layman. Because a helicopter will not crash without losing altitude. Okay, so I need to know more in order to inform whether or not we can learn from this experience. But like I said, this should not bring closure to the matter. We should not think that we can go to sleep. I agree that part of the government effort to retool the military, the Air Force, speaks broadly to the issue of making the security of our country. But we are told that the aircraft was serviceable.
Yeah, it was serviceable. Yes. It was airworthy.
Airworthy. So the issue, except to say that it didn't have some security features. So the issue generally, general conclusion is that the helicopter was airworthy and that it could be used. But the better it would have been if it had ABCD. So that means that it met the minimum standard to be used in our airspace. That's just the conclusion of it. That the helicopter met the minimum standard to be used. So the purchase of helicopters is not a solution or it's not a solution to avert what has happened. It will support, I agree. But it is not a solution to avert. And we shouldn't use the death of this innocent, these gallant Ghanaians to say we are buying helicopters. Because the purchase of helicopters is not the solution. Because the report itself says that the helicopter was airworthy. It was serviceable. So it means that we can even buy the same helicopters, new helicopters, and we'll still have that incidents.
Yeah, but the committee strongly recommended that we modernize the fleet of the Ghana Air Force.
Modernize. That is upgrading the security features.
And it says we should even acquire modern aircraft with modern navigation system. That was the recommendation.
Yes. And I'm saying that we can still do that, and we will still have. We don't pray for such, and we pray against the occurrence of sin. But I'm saying that recommendation are consequential to the whole report. But the government of their report says that the helicopter was airworthy, it was serviceable, though it would have been good that it has certain state-of-the-art security features, which it didn't have. They fell short of telling us what those security features were. Even if they mention it, we may not understand, but we will appreciate that they did a thorough work. They are again telling us that, government should ensure retooling and modernizing our air fleet. I agree that as part of the whole issue to make sure that we are air prepared for the defense of the country, we need to have state and modern, equipment and infrastructure to support that. But I don't think that the report should bring closure to this issue because there are answers that families of the deceased have not gotten as friends. We've not gotten, as citizens, we have not gotten, and the government will have to come more detail.
I think you should say you have not gotten. Nobody has asked you to come and tell us what Ghanaians are thinking.
I'm representing.
I'm representing the people of Wale. I'm also representing the people of Wale. Bring closure. So speak about yourself. Don't speak for Ghanaians.
No, with the grace of a senior.
The issue is that bring closure. You can't force to open.
Okay.
I'm not saying that what has. Let me just clear. I'm not saying that what has happened. Some people will not be satisfied with the report.
Yeah.
I have raised questions. Unless, of course, my senior is providing me answers to those questions.
So we answer, you bring another more. Then for how long?
No, I'm not bringing more. When I answered, I'm satisfied with the answer, I'm good.
You'd
they are genuine,
appreciate the answers.
Yeah, they are genuine questions to raise.
Very well. Yeah, let me hear you on this and the recommendations thereof from the report.
So I think I'll also try and then talk through some of the findings from the committee. And maybe to start with, I commend the government for setting up a committee. And beyond that, having a committee present the report publicly. We've had instances where committees have been set for fires in the past that we don't even have.
We don't hear anything from them.
So I think we must commend the government for that. And maybe to add or to help honorable member, I think the report mentioned whether assess human error, weather, and then lastly, mechanical. They ruled out human error because they had assessed the medical and psychological report of the pilot, the technical officer, and the co-pilot. And they said they were in good condition and there were no psychological issues for the 3 crew members, so members of the crew. So I think that was ruled out because they had also spoken to people who were closely connected with them. And they said all 3 of them were calm before they took off. So I think that assessment was done and the human error was ruled out. Also on the mechanical issue, there was no mechanical issue. I think the only issue I have there is that the aircraft or the helicopter was due for servicing in May. In May 2020.
Meaning it was not done.
But then they requested for an extension from the manufacturer to August. Which means that if we have any aircraft or helicopter that's due for servicing, we should do it, as opposed to requesting for extension. Because potentially, if your car is due for servicing, you could ignore it and use it for your number of, but then you are still putting yourself at risk. So when it was due for servicing and you requested for extension, if we had the opportunity, I think we should not even have requested for extension in the first place. Because for aircraft, the risk is very high. And so you don't even run it like a vehicle. You have to go for the servicing.
And probably the servicing would have would have brought to the fore the issues with the security features that came, and all of
which is why and sometimes the same aircraft can be upgraded.
Sure.
So we could have brought in those equipment or advanced warning system that we are requesting for now, and then done that before putting it into use. So they settled on the weather, and obviously for our part of the world, the weather plays a critical role. Talking to some aviation experts, of course, I'm not a pilot, but talking to some aviation experts, I think one of the advice one of the things they say they were taught in school as a pilot is that when it comes to the forces of nature, don't take chances. You could easily be killed, or you could kill the people on board if you take chances with the forces of nature. So acts of God are things you don't take chances with. So if you go, there's a cloud. If you have the opportunity to avoid it, avoid it. And I think on that day, there were reports that there was another helicopter that took off, that had an emergency.
Yes.
There was another one that came back. So it means that we had a discretion not to have even taken off in the first place, because the forces of nature were there and they could also pose risk factors. And so for anybody who is an aviation expert, they advise that when you have acts of God, avoid it. And the person gave me a very good example of where he was on board a flight. It landed at the Lusaka airport. As soon as it touched down, 2 seconds after it touched down, the pilot took off again. He didn't say anything. People were screaming. And then the pilot went and then landed safely. After he landed safely, he informed the passengers that as soon as he touched the runway, he saw a rat on the runway. He couldn't take chances with that because you didn't know what that rat could do to the aeroplane. So he decided to take off and avoid the rat. The second instance where you have swarm of birds, don't run into it. If you run into it, one of them could enter the engine catches fire, that's it. So whenever you have any acts of nature or force of nature,
you don't take chances.
Advise that you don't take chances. And I think that's the thing, that it ended up being the weather that we are being advised that please do not take chances with these things, because the advanced warning system, yes, it will help, but we had an option to cancel the flight because it was reported that one of the ministers was supposed to have used a commercial flight, gone to Kumasi, and joined the Ashanti regional minister. So if we had cancelled the flight, all the members on board could have gone for that option. So at any point in time when we have discretion, we should empower our pilots to exercise discretion that, Honorable Minister, we cannot go on this flight. Let's cancel it. And for most advanced countries, that's what they do. Remember in 2010, there was volcanic eruption somewhere in Iceland. And that caused a lot of flights. About 40,000 flights were cancelled in 8 days. Why couldn't he have taken the risk? And these are advanced countries. They could have done things to avoid it. But you see, that's the same point we were making, that when visibility is impaired, you have to cancel the flight, and they won't take chances. So I think for us as a country, we should empower our pilots. We should also take discretion and say that, look, a flight that was supposed to take off at 8 a.m., we waited until 9:12 before taking off. It means that we assessed the weather, we realized there was some risk, and then instead of cancelling the flight entirely, we decided to still go, even though the conditions were hazy. And
the lead investigator made the point that on the day of the flight, the visibility was much worse. Eyewitness accounts indicate it dropped as low as 200 meters at some point. So that was really, really terrible.
And so, and I think over and above that, when we empower our pilots and the crew to advise on condition and take discretion, it also borders on things around mechanical issues. So recently, Air India had a crash, and as soon as the aeroplane took off, it started descending. And initial in the investigation, there was an error somewhere by the pilot. He touched something that he was not supposed to have touched, and that's caused it. And so for pilots, I think issues around mechanical issues, you have to clear before you move. And after they've taken off, like the example I've given, they have the discretion to decide on what to do. And I give you a very good example. I was returning from Kenya to Ghana, and sometime when we go to Yaoundé in Cameroon, the pilot said he had to make an emergency landing in Yaoundé. So when we got down, he told us that he noticed that the fuel in the aircraft was not enough to take us to Accra. So he made an emergency landing in Yaoundé, Cameroon, refueled, and continued to Accra. And I shared it with my friends, and one of them said, look, when it comes to aviation, there's no 1 gallon pilot. You can't do 1 gallon. he knows that when he takes, because he can't do 1 gallon, park somewhere in the space and then go for roof well and then come. No. And so the pilot knew that he couldn't take chances. So imagine, yes, he would have taken him to Accra, but after arriving in Accra, there is crisis. He has to wait and then he drops. So when it comes, so the pilot was so smart that, and before we did the emergency landing, we stayed in the air for about 30 minutes. And that's time he was burning the fuel to make it light to land. And I said, then you should have continued to Accra. Why would you burn the fuel? Said, look, they don't take chances. When there is a risk, even the minimal risk, they will go for the safest option, which is what we should do at all times. We encourage and empower pilots that, look, tell the president that the aircraft cannot take off. And so maybe you have a conference to attend the UN, let's cancel it. Because for us as a country, lives matter than even attending a conference or events.
It's true. I think you raised a very, very important point. But Vic, do you find this report exhaustive and that the country can say, okay, well done to the investigators, let's move on with our lives, or we still need to do something more?
I think we do need to commend the president and the investigators and Captain Fojero for leading this for all of us. So I think that we have to do. But I have some questions in my mind. Who made the choice to purchase these aircrafts without relevant avionics safety equipment? Who made that decision? And was someone cutting corners, or were there genuine financial constraints in the military's coffers, and therefore their hands were effectively tied? And will the same people be put in place to buy the new equipment? So these are things. One of the things we have learned from this report is that there was no information on the weather, on the flight route available to the pilot. So they knew what was happening in Accra, they knew what was happening in Kumasi, but in between, he was basically flying blind, effectively. And it crashed 12 days to its 90-day expiry period. But we understand that although an extension was sought, the manufacturer actually gave the permission to have that extension. And as a layperson, I'm seeing things like autopilot function. The autopilot function was missing. That seems to me to be so basic. Autopilot and simulation training, the fact that they are recommending that we do this means that we don't currently do it. I remember as far back as maybe 25 years ago or so, I was working back then on contracts to do simulation training for the Ministry of Defense for the UK, for the RAF pilots. So, I mean, why are we now in a position where we are being recommended to start simulation training? I mean, why? And it's also making me wonder whether we have these safety things on our commercial flights, the domestic ones. The domestic ones. Going from Accra to Kumasi, Accra to Tamale and all that. We really need to, somebody has to actually... audit all of this. Yeah, audit all of them. All those small planes that are flying us all over the country. They all need to be audited because right now the focus is on the military jets. But we really have to look at the commercial jets now because a lot of people rely on those. And the saddest part of all this is that they're saying that if these safety measures had been in place, the thing, this tragic accident, this tragedy would have been, could have been prevented. So I think it's important that we follow through and with the recommendations and not just, it shouldn't disappear somewhere. We need to be updated on whether they've been done and the timelines. We need to know about the timelines. And my point is somebody must have known about all of this, that these helicopters were not up to scratch. Somebody somewhere knows about this. And as usual, that person is faceless. In Ghana, the same thing. No accountability, no responsibility. The person is hiding somewhere in the system. And then the system is blamed. And that's it. And all of this has got to do with the Ghana Armed Forces. All of this has got to do with the Ghana Armed Forces. Unfortunately, the first two topics today that we've been talking, and they've all ended up in tragedy. So there have to be serious questions asked about all of this, and we have to follow it through and make sure. And there's an act, actually, Act 1028, which deals with aircraft accident and incident investigation prevention. and there's a bureau, and there's a person who is supposed to be the commissioner for all of this. So I don't know if we've heard from him. Maybe we have, and I haven't heard. But I don't know if any of you here have heard.
A member of the bureau was part of the committee.
Yeah.
Yes,
a member of the bureau
that,
was part of it.
but he is the substantive commissioner. So I guess I'm asking whether in his own capacity and in his own office and under this act and the responsibilities that he has under this act, whether he's spoken to us as Ghanaians, either before the report or subsequently since the report has been established. We need to hear from him. I don't even know whether people know who he is. You know, I don't know who he is. And
I don't know.
Yeah, so we need to know who he is, and he needs to come and talk to us and assure us, because I would like to think that he's the one who will be updating us with the implementation, that this is what we've done, this is where we are, now our armed forces are fine, because he's tasked with investigating these things and preventing these things. So that is what I think. The commercial flights.
Yeah, we should begin. Somebody should begin auditing.
We don't want any more Ghanaian lives to be lost, please.
And these commercial flights actually fly a lot of people in
a lot of people, and I don't know how well maintained they are. There was one that just kept cancelling flights all over the place recently. You know? So, and then they'll say, oh, it's fuel, then oh, it's not fuel, it's something. We need to
I mean, I think this disaster should really make us wake up, and because interestingly, when it's about air disaster, your chances of survival almost.
You are gone.
Yeah, you're gone.
I mean, forget all that. The words that the air hostesses tell us. It's just a psychological. If it happens, you're gone.
But I think in India there was a survivor, right?
But he was on the ground, wasn't he?
Oh, he was. No, he was part of the.
Yeah, there was one survivor.
He survived. But that's about hundreds of people killed and just one person.
You call God.
Yes.
But
we've done 46 minutes after. 46 minutes after 10. This is News File on the Joy News channel on Multi TV. We'll pause for a very short break. When we come back, we'll quickly deal with the approval of the CJ nominee, His Lordship Justice Paul Baffoe-Bonnie, and then we spend the rest of the time on the 2026 budget. Stay with us. Welcome back. This is News File on the Joy News channel. We'll quickly move to our next issue, and already, I mean, our appetite is wet for the budget proper. So we'll be getting into the budget conversations very, very soon. But one thing happened in Parliament even before the budget was presented, and that's how come the budget presentation came that late. Because the CJ nominee had to be approved. The report from the appointment committee was ready. It was laid before Parliament at a plenary. Debates happened on the report, and then it came down to the approval, and that's where the issues started. And even before that, the minority had staged a walkout during the vetting of the CJ nominee. Honorable Kabiru, where was the minority going with all of this?
Yeah, so thank you. The issue with the nomination of Mr. Honorable
Paul Baffoe-Bonnie.
Yes. Paul Baffoe-Bonnie as Chief Justice had his basis on the fact that Mrs. Tokono was removed as the Chief Justice pursuant to Article 146 of the Constitution. That whole Article 146 procedure for the removal of Chief Justice has been challenged by several people. Currently, as we speak, we have not less than about 8 cases on different fora that the people are objecting to the removal of the Chief Justice. The basis for the removal of Chief Justice was based on the fact that a so-called stated misbehavior pursuant to the petition filed with the precedent by one Daniel Ofori. Daniel Ofori allegations were actually determined with an allegation or alleged breach of the procedures as contained in Article 146. Because as Tokono herself is saying, instead of 1464, she came under 1466 or 7, thereabout. Because there was no prima facie determination, and the prima facie determination she would have the right to be heard in a prima facie dissemination. She was not given that right to be heard. That brings to question whether or not her removal was constitutional. That said, we are of the view that Parliament has the right to approve a nomination if there is a vacancy for that matter. And within our standing orders, you can only go in and vet. You cannot be Minister for Finance and you are vetting an appointment for minister, irrespective of the fact that it's been referred to you by the President. So if in the estimation, in the wisdom of Parliament, there is the view that going on with an activity is likely to cause constitutional crisis. For a moment, let's think. If the case before the ECOWAS Parliament for Human Rights by Gertrude Tokono is successful, what becomes of the position of the Chief Justice if he is confirmed? And we cannot have two Chief Justices. Now, one will say that by operation of law, there was nothing to start with, so you cannot put something on nothing. Yeah. Because there was not a position created, because her removal was not constitutional, was illegal. So Mr. Baffoe-Bonnie appointment couldn't have, be standing the test of time. But the question would then is, are you going to remove him as Chief Justice, or you say that he was not Chief Justice to start with? So to avoid all this confusion, the minority holds the view that, look, the position of a Chief Justice... But
if the minority was minded by the ruling of the Supreme Court in Ekwasi-Fua versus the Attorney General, the court was clear that when it comes to the performance of a constitutional function, the only forum that can stay the hands of the person performing such function should be the Supreme Court. And until the court expressly says so, nobody can stop, the occupant of a constitutional position from functioning as it was.
You see, Vincent Eko Asafo versus the Attorney General has not been determined. It is the procedural or interlocutory matter that was determined. That's the issue of the injunction.
Sure. Okay. But the court used that to make the position clear.
That's what I'm saying. And that is, the court needed to determine the substantive case for us to know whether or not her removal, because that is the appropriate forum he was.
Yes.
So the choice of jurisdiction is not in question. That Mr. Asaf was at the Supreme Court stating that the removal process of Tokono was illegal is at the right forum. So he was actually being at the right forum. But there was an interlocutory matter, or an issue of injunction, whether he could injunct. And that's what the court was of the view that, look, was the Constitution, so in the spirit of separation of powers, entrust a certain mandate on someone to perform, the court cannot. And they also use the Justice Abdullahi case, which is also recent, to support the fact that once the Constitution has given someone role to play, it's not for the court to, take away that particular rule from it. It is in the exercise. If you're of the view that the exercise is done in a manner that is unconstitutional, then you don't come for that basis to challenge it. But in the course of performing the duty, you cannot injunct the person, so the president cannot be injuncted from performing his duty. That's the argument of the court.
So if the president has performed his duty of issuing the warrant to dismiss the Chief Justice and nominated a new Chief Justice, it presupposes that there is a vacancy, and that's how come the president has done that.
That is the assumption or the presumption of the president in this regard. But as an organ of government, and so as people who make this particular law, and people who are supposed to respect this law, do we have to think like the president? For crying out loud, we are not stooges of the president.
Sure.
We are not, an appendage of the president. Even where the president, there's a feeling in Parliament the president is going wayward. It is for Parliament, which is the conscience of the nation, to step in and hold the president's break. Right? It is in that spirit that the minority says that, look, the office of the Chief Justice is not in effective sense vacant. There's an acting Chief Justice who can perform the role of the Chief Justice, so-called, except that he's not the Chief Justice, because acting Chief Justice is not the Chief Justice. But he can perform any other role that the Chief Justice would have been performing. Why don't you let the person act? Give Mrs. Tokono the opportunity to litigate her matter to his conclusion. Why are we in a hurry when the person is actually, is before you or before the laws of the country to ventilate or to make sure that her issues are redressed. Mind you, we're also drawing the speaker attention to the fact that the lawyers call the sub judice rule. A matter pending before court that if you take a decision could prejudice the interest of the people in court. You should avoid taking that matter. And our standard rules have provided for such that if in your opinion that we take an action which is going to prejudice an interest of a party before the cause or before the laws of the country, stop taking that decision. So the minority making this argument and saying that, look, there are laws. Apart from this case, there is also the case filed by the Center for Citizenship for Constitutionality and then Systems. There are several, even there are high court cases where her right, fundamental human right, the right to be heard, she's alleging that
she was not given
the right to be heard. And this is so common. This is so common that even if you're not a lawyer, you know that even if you go to the chief palace with your case, before the chief will make a determination of the matter, he will ask, what do you have to say about the allegation? She's not been given that opportunity. She feels that the process was biased. And we all, using Mr. Paul Baffoe-Bonnie, we hold the view that he's also a conflicted personality. And that being conflicted in this regard, he ought to have also hastened slowly. Why is he conflicted? He is the acting Chief Justice. He is supposed to ensure speedy trial of cases. He is supposed to direct, if he's not directing, the registrar to schedule cases, the registrar of the court to schedule cases. If the registrar is not doing so, he holds the ultimate responsibility to case it. Again, Mr. Baffoe-Bonnie was the person who sat on the case by Vincent.
That threw out the injunction.
I mean, throwing out the injunction. Basically, one will not but to think that there's a clear conflict of interest because you are the ultimate beneficiary of the fact that the woman should not return. So, putting all this together, we feel like the president could have done it more, even if he wanted to remove the Chief Justice, do it within the dictates of the law. But you see, if you have a president promising the good people of Ghana before even elections, and the party functionaries saying it boldly without remorse, that given opportunity, we are going to remove the Chief Justice, and that the government, when the government came to power, the first thing they were doing was to rape the sanctity of the judiciary. The first thing they could do was to say that the Article 127 of the Constitution do not matter more, which guarantees the independence of the judiciary, and that the government could set a bad precedent. My only worry, as an ordinary Ghanaian...
What did the government do in setting the bad precedents you talk about?
They have opened the floodgate that anyone can come with any trivial issue to occasion the removal of a Chief Justice. What is the breach of law? The stated misbehavior. What is the authority to determine whether an act is a stated misbehavior? The Constitution hasn't defined it, but we can go to previous, Commission of Inquiries. You are talking of moral turpitude. Has it said any of her conduct constitute moral turpitude? We are talking of grave lapse of judgment. Which of her conduct constitute grave lapse of judgment?
But the Constitution set out how the prima facie will be determined. And that process was followed.
And that process was opaque, and that there are no even, that's why CJ Wood, Sophia Akufo, actually is advocating for a regulation to guide Article 146 of the Constitution. Because it gives any, mischievous precedent an opportunity. And that's what I'm saying. I'm just afraid that any Chief Justice can be removed without cause. If Mrs. Tokono is made to face this, I am clear in my mind that any Chief Justice of the Republic would be removed at any time by any allegation that probably will be brought, and you say, damn, any consequences. If you come to the court, the acting Chief Justice will impanel people and say that they should throw it away. Is that how we want to subject the judiciary to? Look, I have my issues with the judiciary.
You wrap up for me.
I have my issues with the judiciary. And they are personal issues. And I feel like we will need to address them to ensure that the only arbiter, the only way that I can go for justice, if a so-called powerful man is coming after me, is the judiciary. And that in the wisdom of the framers of the Constitution, we will need to have a judiciary that would actually protect everyone, irrespective of your station in life. We don't want to subject such an institution to the whims and caprices of the executive. Neither do we want to subject it to Parliament. We know the case of State versus Ochery, what Nkrumah did. We are in this country, we read about these things. We have come from a long history of where the judiciary was under attack, the judiciary could not perform its role, and we have moved from that. And the 1992 Constitution has also in a dawn of constitutional supremacy.
Very well.
So that is the issues that the minority have about it. And we think that it's not proper. We feel that Mr. Baffoe-Bonnie is conflicted. We feel that Justice Tokono was not treated fairly, and that a bad precedent, the floodgates have been opened, and that any justice, Supreme Court, Chief Justice is a candidate for removal.
Very well.